Vanessa walked into the police station, the weight of her mission pressing down on her shoulders. She was there to uncover the truth, a truth buried beneath layers of corruption, brutality, and fear. As she delved deeper, she knew one thing: this investigation would change everything. Vanessa was prepared for the fight of her life. You are welcome to our channel. Sit back and relax as you listen to this story of bravery and justice. One sunny morning, Vanessa walked briskly towards the police station. The air was crisp, and the sky was a brilliant blue, but Vanessa's mind was focused on the task at hand. The new state government had entrusted her with a critical mission, and she was determined to see it through. As she approached the imposing building, she couldn't help but feel a sense of gravity. She knew her work was crucial in uncovering the truth and ensuring justice. The police force had been plagued by high rates of bribery, extortion, and brutality, and it was her job to investigate these issues thoroughly. Vanessa entered the station, her heels clicking against the tiled floor. The station was bustling with activity, officers and staff moving about with purpose. She took a deep breath, steeling herself for what lay ahead. She approached the front desk, where a young officer looked up from his paperwork. "Good morning. I'm here for an official audit," Vanessa said, her voice calm and authoritative. The officer nodded, checking a list in front of him. "Yes, we've been expecting you. Officer Joe will be here shortly to assist you," he replied, motioning for her to take a seat in the waiting area. Vanessa nodded and sat down, her eyes scanning the room, taking in every detail. She noticed the officers around her, some engaged in serious discussions, others laughing and joking. Despite the normalcy, Vanessa knew that beneath the surface, something much darker was at play. A few minutes later, a tall, broad-shouldered man approached her. He had a friendly smile on his face, but his eyes held a sharp, calculating look. "Good morning, I'm Officer Joe. How can I assist you today?" he asked, extending his hand. Vanessa stood up and shook his hand firmly. "Good morning, Officer Joe. I'm here to conduct an audit of some police reports. I'll need access to your files and records," she said, her tone professional. Joe's smile widened. "Of course, right this way," he said, leading her down a corridor to a small office. Vanessa followed, her senses alert. She could feel his eyes on her, sizing her up. They reached the office, and Joe opened the door, motioning for her to enter first. The room was small but well organized, with a desk, a few chairs, and several filing cabinets. "Feel free to use this office for your work. If you need anything, just let me know," Joe said, standing by the door. "Thank you, Officer Joe. I appreciate your cooperation," Vanessa replied, sitting down and opening her briefcase. Joe lingered for a moment, then nodded and left, closing the door behind him. Vanessa exhaled slowly, opening the first file. She began reviewing the reports, her eyes scanning the pages for any irregularities. After a few hours, there was a knock on the door. Joe entered, carrying a cup of coffee. "Thought you might need a little pick-me-up," he said, placing the cup on the desk. "Thank you," Vanessa said, though she didn't touch the coffee. Joe sat down across from her, leaning back in his chair. "How's it going? Finding everything you need?" he asked, his tone casual. "Yes, so far so good," Vanessa replied, not looking up from her work. She could sense his scrutiny, his attempt to gauge her progress. Joe leaned forward, his voice dropping to a low, serious tone. "You know, some things are better left alone," he said, his eyes fixed on hers. Vanessa looked up, meeting his gaze. "I'm just doing my job," she replied firmly. Joe's smile faded, replaced by a look of frustration. "Sometimes, doing your job can lead to complications," he said, his tone carrying the hint of menace. Vanessa didn't flinch. She had encountered intimidation tactics before and knew how to handle them. "I appreciate your concern, Officer Joe, but I have a duty to complete this audit thoroughly," she said, her voice steady. Joe stood up, his face a mask of barely concealed anger. "Very well. "If you need anything, you know where to find me," he said, turning on his heel and leaving the office. Vanessa watched him go, her mind racing. She knew she was onto something significant, and Joe's reaction only confirmed it. As the day wore on, Vanessa uncovered more inconsistencies in the reports. Patterns of bribery, extortion, and brutality emerged, painting a disturbing picture of corruption within the force. She documented everything meticulously, aware that each piece of evidence was crucial. Late in the afternoon, as Vanessa was preparing to leave, Joe appeared again. This time, he wasn't alone. 2 other officers flanked him, their expressions unreadable. "Leaving already? I thought you might be staying a bit longer," Joe said, his voice dripping with false politeness. "I have what I need for today," Vanessa replied, standing up and gathering her files. Joe stepped closer, his face inches from hers. "I hope you understand the consequences of your actions," he whispered, his breath hot against her ear. Vanessa didn't waver. "I do, Officer Joe. And I hope you understand the consequences of yours," she said, her voice cold. She brushed past him, walking confidently out of the office. As Vanessa left the station, she felt a surge of determination. This was far from over. She had the evidence, and now it was time to take action. The corrupt officers, including Joe, would soon face the full force of justice, and Vanessa, a CIA agent on a mission, would see it through to the end. As the day went on, Joe's demeanor shifted from friendly to increasingly insistent. He kept dropping hints about the people involved in the cases Vanessa was auditing. "These aren't just any cases," Joe said, leaning in close, his voice barely above a whisper. "You're dealing with powerful individuals who don't take kindly to outsiders prying into their affairs." Vanessa listened, maintaining a calm exterior, but her mind was racing. She knew Joe was trying to scare her off, to make her abandon her investigation. Instead of deterring her, his words only made her more determined. Vanessa had been in difficult situations before and wasn't about to back down now. Her suspicion of Joe's true motives grew stronger with each passing hour. Later that afternoon, Vanessa's phone buzzed with a new message. She opened it to find an anonymous tip. The message warned her about deep-seated corruption within the Justice Division and advised her to be particularly wary of Joe. Vanessa's heart raced as she read the words. She realized that her task was even more perilous than she had initially thought, but she also knew she couldn't ignore the warning. Determined to uncover the truth, Vanessa decided to dig deeper into Joe's background. She spent hours going through records and files, looking for any inconsistencies or signs of wrongdoing. As she delved into the documents, a clearer picture began to emerge. There were numerous complaints and allegations against Joe, but they had always been dismissed or buried. It became evident that Joe was not only complicit but likely at the heart of the corruption she was investigating. The tension between Vanessa and Joe reached a boiling point when she decided to confront him directly. She waited until the end of the day when most of the other officers had left, ensuring they could talk without interruption. Vanessa found Joe in his office, sorting through some papers. "Joe, I've heard some things," she began, her voice steady but firm. Joe looked up, his eyes narrowing as he assessed her. "You don't know what you're talking about," he snapped, attempting to brush her off. But Vanessa didn't back down. "I know more than you think. I've received information about corruption within this division, and your name keeps coming up," she continued, her gaze unwavering. Joe stood up, his face a mask of anger. "You're treading on dangerous ground. You should stop while you still can," he warned, his tone filled with menace. Vanessa felt the atmosphere in the room grow heavy with tension. Despite Joe's intimidation tactics, she remained resolute. "I'm here to find the truth, Joe. No matter how deep it goes or who it implicates," she said, her voice clear and unwavering. Joe's expression hardened. He took a step towards her, but Vanessa held her ground. She knew that showing any sign of weakness could be disastrous. "You don't scare me, Joe. If you're involved in anything illegal, I will find out," she stated, her determination shining through. Joe glared at her for a long moment before finally backing down. "You're making a big mistake," he muttered, but Vanessa could see the fear in his eyes. She knew she had struck a nerve. As Vanessa left Joe's office, she felt a surge of adrenaline. The confrontation had been risky, but it was necessary. She was more determined than ever to see her mission through to the end. The pieces were starting to fall into place, and it was only a matter of time before Joe's true nature was fully exposed. Vanessa's relentless investigation began to yield results. She discovered documents that showed a trail of illegal transactions and misuse of power, all leading back to Joe. These documents, combined with testimonies from several brave officers, painted a clear picture of Joe's involvement in criminal activities such as bribery, extortion, and brutality. The prevalence of police brutality was shocking, with numerous reports detailing severe abuses of power. Innocent suspects were often subjected to dehumanizing treatment, including beatings, unlawful detentions, and threats. The brutality stripped away their dignity, leaving deep psychological scars. Vanessa meticulously compiled this evidence into a detailed report. She knew that presenting such damning evidence against a powerful figure like Joe would be dangerous, but it was necessary. The weight of her responsibility settled heavily on her shoulders, blending fear with a steely determination to see justice served. As Vanessa's investigation closed in on the truth, Joe grew increasingly desperate. He began to act out of character, his once confident demeanor cracking under the pressure. He tampered with evidence, trying to erase the incriminating paper trail Vanessa had uncovered. He also resorted to threats, intimidating anyone who might dare to testify against him. Several officers received anonymous threats, warning them to stay silent or face severe consequences. But Vanessa, aware of Joe's tactics, remained vigilant. She took extra precautions to protect her evidence and reassure her witnesses, ensuring that Joe's attempts to sabotage her work were in vain. The atmosphere in the station grew more tense with each passing day. Vanessa worked tirelessly, often late into the night, piecing together the final parts of her investigation. The suspense was palpable, as she knew any misstep could jeopardize the entire operation. But Vanessa's resolve never wavered. She continued to gather more evidence, always staying one step ahead of Joe's increasingly frantic schemes. Finally, the day arrived when Vanessa was ready to present her findings to higher authorities. She felt a mix of anxiety and anticipation as she walked into the meeting room, her report in hand. The senior officials listened intently as Vanessa laid out her case, detailing the extent of Joe's corruption. The room was silent as the weight of the evidence settled over them. There was no denying the truth. Joe was summoned and confronted with the overwhelming evidence. In a moment of sheer panic, realizing that his time was up, Joe tried to flee. The tension in the air was electric as officers moved to apprehend him. The chase was brief. Joe was quickly caught and arrested. The sight of Joe in handcuffs, his face a mask of defeat and fear, was a powerful moment for everyone present. Vanessa watched as Joe was led away, feeling a wave of relief wash over her. It was over. The corrupt officer who had tried to intimidate and derail her had finally been exposed and brought to justice. Vanessa felt a deep sense of victory, not just for herself, but for all those who had been wronged by Joe's actions. She had fulfilled her mission, and the police force could begin to heal and rebuild its integrity. With Joe arrested and fired, Vanessa took a moment to reflect on the challenges she had faced. The past few weeks had been intense, filled with danger and uncertainty, but her relentless pursuit of justice had paid off. The police department, once riddled with corruption, began to heal. Vanessa's hard work and bravery had not only uncovered the truth, but also set the stage for significant reforms. The community, long disillusioned by the rampant bribery, extortion, and brutality, started to regain trust in their law enforcement. Vanessa could see the beginnings of change, and it filled her with a sense of fulfillment. As news of Joe's arrest spread, Vanessa received numerous commendations for her bravery and dedication. Her unwavering commitment to justice had not gone unnoticed. The higher authorities praised her for her thorough investigation and her refusal to be intimidated. The changes within the police department, inspired by her actions, brought a renewed sense of hope. Officers who had once felt powerless began to believe that integrity could be restored. Vanessa felt a profound sense of accomplishment, yet she knew that the fight against corruption was far from over. There were still many battles to be fought, and she was ready to continue her work. Vanessa's story ended on a hopeful note. Her unwavering commitment to justice had inspired others to stand up against corruption. The positive changes in the justice system gave the community a renewed sense of hope. People began to believe that fairness and integrity could prevail. Vanessa knew there was still much to be done, but she was ready for whatever came next. Her dedication to uncovering the truth and ensuring justice for all would continue to drive her. With each small victory, the path to a more just and honest police force became clearer. Vanessa looked towards the future with determination, knowing that her work was making a real difference. Thank you for listening and watching. We're so grateful for your support. Before you go, please subscribe to our channel and let us know where you're watching from in the comments. Your subscription helps us create more heartwarming stories that resonate with viewers like you. Don't leave without hitting that subscribe button. We can't wait to share more with you.